Hi. It was an ordinary night, which made the moment stand out all the more. She sat cross-legged on the floor, folding laundry, humming along to some playlist that faded into the background as easily as wallpaper. I stood at the kitchen counter, matching socks, the little domestic rituals that filled the quiet between real conversations. Her voice came casually, like a leaf drifting down in autumn, weightless until it lands. "Strong men scare me," she said, not looking up from the pile of shirts. "I'm glad you're not like that." I didn't answer right away. I just nodded, half smiled, let it pass like I didn't hear the faint scratch beneath the silk of her words. But something in the way she said it, that slight hesitation before, like that, felt off. It wasn't the relief of safety. It was the shadow of disappointment trying on politeness. Later, after the dishwasher hummed its slow cycle and the lights dimmed, I lay awake with that line playing back in my head. Not like that. Not what? Not strong? Not scary? Not a man she feared, or not a man she desired. I wanted to believe she meant it as praise. That she felt safe with me. That being gentle and thoughtful still meant something to her. But beneath the surface, something shifted. I felt it like you feel the tension in a rope just before it snaps. A tightness that wasn't there the day before. It wasn't the first time she'd said something strange. A few months back, during a minor disagreement about a delivery that had gone missing, she laughed and said, "You're so patient it's almost frustrating." I'd shrugged it off then, even made a joke about being allergic to drama. But now, the pattern began to emerge, each comment like a breadcrumb leading to a place I didn't want to go. We didn't fight. That wasn't our style. We solved problems, made plans, talked about careers and vacations. I asked how her fitness class was going. She asked if I'd ever considered trying boxing. Of all things, said it might be fun for you, a little edge. I thought it was a joke. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being sensitive, that I should be grateful I wasn't the kind of man who raised his voice or clenched his fists, that being calm was still a strength. But then came the dreams, short, flickering, emotionally charged. Her laughing with someone faceless. A silhouette with squared shoulders, a different kind of energy. I started catching myself watching her more closely. Not out of suspicion, not yet, but out of confusion. I was trying to understand what she wanted, who she was becoming. That same week, she started playing a different kind of music. Louder, more aggressive, less soothing than what she usually had on. She'd bounce her leg while scrolling her phone, her lips curling into faint smiles I didn't recognize. She didn't ask for back rubs anymore. Her eyes didn't search for mine when she walked into a room. The slow erosion of intimacy isn't loud. It's not a crash. It's a gentle fade, like color draining from a photograph. At dinner 2 nights later, she mentioned how some women get tired of being the strong one in the relationship. I looked up from my plate, waiting for her to clarify, to redirect the comment toward a friend or article. But she just sipped her wine and didn't elaborate. That night, as I lay beside her, her breathing steady in sleep, I stared at the ceiling and realized I was holding my breath. I didn't know exactly why. I only knew something had shifted, and she had no intention of telling me what. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek as she left for work. Her hand lingered for a second on my shoulder, a familiar gesture. But her eyes were already halfway out the door. I watched her go with a sense of calm dread I couldn't quite name yet. In hindsight, that comment, "Strong men scare me," wasn't a warning. It was a confession, and I was too polite, too proud, too naive to ask what she meant. I thought I could outlove it. I thought, if I stayed steady, it would pass. Instead, it opened the door to a truth I wasn't ready to see. The party was loud, the kind of evening where laughter masks boredom and drinks cover discomfort. It was one of her friends' birthdays, someone I didn't know well, but well enough to smile politely and make small talk. We showed up together, but within 30 minutes, she drifted away like smoke from a candle. I sipped my drink, nodded through conversations, and caught glimpses of her across the room. She was with a guy I didn't recognize. Taller, louder, cocky in the way that only someone deeply sure of their own charm can get away with. He wore a leather jacket indoors, which said more than I needed to know. I watched her body language first. That's always where the truth leaks out. She touched his arm when she laughed, once, then twice. Leaned in just a little too close when he whispered something. Her hand rested on her hip the way it did when she was trying to look relaxed but also seen. When she finally returned to me, She smelled like the cologne she hadn't left the house wearing. I didn't say anything. She tossed her hair back and acted like nothing had happened. Later that night, we drove home in silence, the kind that wasn't peaceful, just crowded with unspoken things. Street lights passed across the windshield like slow blinks. Then, out of nowhere, she spoke, her voice carefully casual but threaded with something else. "He's arrogant," she said, then hesitated, as if testing the weight of the next word. "But confident. You know?" I kept my eyes on the road. "Sure. He made a pretty loud impression." She laughed lightly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's not about him. Just that kind of energy. It's magnetic, I guess." I didn't respond. Not because I had nothing to say, but because the words I wanted to use weren't allowed between us anymore. Words like boundaries, respect, and "what are you trying to tell me?" That night, I lay in bed next to her and stared at the ceiling again, wide awake under the weight of a silence that no longer felt peaceful. Her breathing was even, her back turned slightly toward me. I used to feel comfort in that curve of her body. Now it felt like a wall. Over the next week, the shift became more pronounced. She started using phrases that clanged against my ears like warning bells. Things like, "You're just so understanding, sometimes it's hard to feel anything," or, "You never get mad, even when you probably should. It's weird." Weird. That was the word she used for the patience I'd always thought was love. I began to notice the way she tested me, little pokes to see if I'd react. Coming home hours late from drinks with coworkers, leaving her phone face down on the table, snapping at me for small things and then watching my face for any flicker of pushback. I didn't give her one. Not yet. I smiled, nodded, folded the invisible tension into neat little boxes and filed them away. But inside, I started taking inventory. It wasn't that she wanted a fight. It was that she wanted to feel something, and my refusal to rise to the bait frustrated her. I could see it in the way she'd roll her eyes when I offered to make dinner or when I asked how her new workout class was going. I was becoming invisible, not because I'd changed, but because she was looking for something I refused to become. One night, while we were watching a movie, she paused it during a scene where the male lead lashed out physically for insulting his partner. She said, almost absently, "It's not good behavior, but at least you know he cares." I kept my voice level. "You don't need to use violence to prove you care." She didn't respond, just clicked play again and stared at the screen. After that, I started remembering little things she'd said over the years, things that didn't register at the time. A passing comment about how her ex could be intense, but in a good way. A story about a friend who liked her man with a little danger in him. I'd brushed it all off then. But now the pattern was screaming. It was becoming clear. My restraint wasn't noble to her. It was absence. My thoughtfulness wasn't strength. It was lack of force. The very things I had built my role in her life upon, dependability, calm, emotional stability, had turned to sand beneath my feet. Still, I didn't confront her. That would have been too easy, too loud, and not nearly enough. I needed to know more. Not just what she wanted, but what she was doing when she stopped wanting me. Because people don't just drift away. They reach for someone else while you're still standing there, and hope you don't notice. I stopped asking questions and started paying attention. It wasn't paranoia. Paranoia is emotional. What I was doing was closer to auditing, a quiet collection of data, detached and patient. If I was wrong, I'd find peace. If I wasn't, then I needed to understand exactly how deep the roots of it went. I began with the obvious. Her phone had become a satellite, always nearby, always face down. She used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter at night. Now it slept beside her, under her pillow. I never touched it, never snooped. That wasn't my way. But I watched. Her mood changed in rhythms I hadn't noticed before. She was irritable on Mondays, indifferent on Wednesdays, then glowing on Thursdays. It was the Thursday smile that caught me off guard the first time, subtle, light, like she was holding back laughter from a private joke. Thursday nights were her new fitness class. Something intense, she said. Something that made her feel strong again. She'd come back flushed, energized, hair still damp from a shower taken somewhere else. I asked once if she wanted me to join her, half joking. She tilted her head and said, "It's kind of my time, you know." I nodded. That week, I reviewed her social media accounts. Nothing obvious, but patterns appeared if you knew where to look. She'd started following men who posted shirtless gym photos, motivational rants peppered with bravado. I scrolled through the comments. Fire emojis. One guy in particular appeared more than the rest. I didn't recognize him, but his name came up again when I glanced at her phone one evening, just the notification preview on the lock screen. Jace, you're trouble. She giggled and locked the screen before I could react. I didn't say a word. Instead, I made myself disappear, emotionally. I pulled back just slightly, not in ways she could accuse me of, just enough that I could see how she'd respond to the absence of my full attention. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she welcomed it. My silence gave her room to become bolder. That weekend, while she was out running errands, I checked our shared calendar, something we both used for coordinating plans. A note caught my eye. Friday, hotel drop. I clicked on it. No location, no details, just that. Hotel drop. The kind of phrase that sounds innocent until you realize it never appeared before. Not once, in 3 years of synced scheduling. The next morning, I checked our credit card statements. Most purchases were routine: groceries, gas, the occasional restaurant charge. But there it was, Skyline Suites, billed 11:47 p.m., 2 Fridays prior. I cross-checked. That night, she said she was having drinks with coworkers to celebrate someone's promotion. It wasn't a one-time thing. There were other charges. Different dates. Different places. Different lies, all wrapped in the same ribbon of casual deceit. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I sat there with my laptop open, her digital trail laid out like a confession typed in ledger format. What stung most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the clarity. Her comment that night, "Strong men scare me," came into full focus. It wasn't fear she was describing. It was avoidance. She wanted someone who wouldn't fight, wouldn't chase, wouldn't challenge her decisions. Someone who'd nod and smile while she dismantled the life we built. And I had been exactly that. I remembered how she used to rest her head on my chest, saying she felt safe with me. How she once told a friend I was the first man she could breathe around. But now, that same safety bored her. She didn't want breath. She wanted heat. She didn't want space. She wanted struggle. Or maybe she just wanted what she thought she couldn't get from me: validation through conquest, power through secrecy. That night, she came home humming. Her skin glowed. Her voice was bright. She called from the hallway. "You still up?" I was in the living room, sipping tea, the TV playing quietly in the background. "Yeah," I said. "Just finishing a show." She kissed me on the cheek, dropped her gym bag in the corner, and flopped onto the couch. "You're quiet tonight." I smiled gently. "Just giving you the calm you wanted." She looked at me for a moment, studying my face, maybe trying to read something. But then she turned back to her phone, scrolling with a soft smile on her lips. She had no idea what I knew. And that was exactly how I wanted it. The mistake people make is assuming silence means surrender. In truth, silence is often the sound of strategy forming. After confirming the hotel receipts, something inside me changed. Not snapped. There was no fury, no cinematic breaking point. Just a quiet recalibration. A part of me stood up emotionally, adjusted its posture, and stopped waiting to be chosen. I didn't ask her where she was going anymore. I didn't reach for her hand when we walked side by side. I gave her all the freedom she didn't realize she'd already taken, not out of defeat, but out of detachment, the kind that precedes precision. I watched her transform in small, revealing ways. She dressed differently on Thursdays now, darker colors, tighter fits. Less like someone headed to a workout, and more like someone performing a role. She bought new perfume. Not sweet or floral like before, but spiced, heavier, designed to be noticed. One night, I waited until she was asleep, breathing softly beside me, the phone still under her pillow. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The sounds told me enough. She'd forgotten to turn off her Bluetooth. A soft voice note played through our shared speaker system in the living room, one of those odd sync quirks neither of us had bothered to fix. I stood in the hallway and listened. His voice was low, confident, intimate in a way that wasn't overt but unmistakably personal. He said something about missing her laugh, told her she was addictive. Then he made a joke I didn't understand, but I heard her giggle in reply, a short burst recorded after his message. Her voice. Her real laugh. The one she hadn't used with me in weeks. The moment didn't break me. It clarified everything. The next day, I went back through the credit card log and calendar entries, cross-referenced dates, times, patterns. She wasn't just seeing someone, She'd constructed a hidden second life. She was organized, careful, almost professional about it. It wasn't messy, which somehow made it worse. I called the hotel in question, asked as a mistaken cardholder for confirmation of charges. They gave me enough dates, room numbers, repeated names. She'd booked under her maiden name. Subtle, but traceable. I printed the receipts, tucked them into a folder, filed it beneath a box of tax papers she never touched. The next morning, I found a note in her planner on the kitchen table. She'd left it open, like always, never thinking I'd look. In the corner of the Friday box, written in pink pen, it read, "Drop at 6, room ready." That same morning, I packed a small bag. Nothing dramatic. Just a few essentials, enough to leave quickly if I needed to. I placed it in the back of the closet under winter coats. Prepared, not paranoid. Emotionally, I felt clean. Hollow, maybe, but no longer raw. The sting of emasculation had passed. What replaced it was something sharper, calmer. Not rage. Not grief. Just clarity. A stillness that comes when you stop begging to be heard and start preparing to be understood. She kept up appearances. Still called me babe, in passing. Still texted things like, "Need anything from the store?" She had no idea I'd seen behind the curtain. That I could tell, just from her posture walking through the door, whether she'd been with him. The glow wasn't something she could fake or hide, and I stopped pretending not to see it. At dinner that weekend, she told me I'd been distant lately. Her voice was careful, probing. I set down my fork, met her eyes across the table. "I've been thinking." She tilted her head, guarded but curious, her voice careful. "About what?" I kept my gaze steady, letting the words land with quiet weight. "About what it means to be soft, and what it costs." Her brow creased slightly, the frown faint but real. "I don't understand," she said, though her tone suggested she was starting to. I gave her a smile I didn't feel. "Exactly?" She watched me for a beat longer, then shifted in her seat. Changed the subject. Something about her sister's upcoming visit. I nodded along, but I wasn't there anymore. I was gone the moment I realized she didn't fear strength. She feared accountability. And the softness she once praised wasn't love. It was convenience. She mistook my restraint for emptiness, my kindness for weakness, my calm for absence of fire. What she didn't understand, what she still couldn't, was that I hadn't stopped fighting. I'd simply changed my target. By the time the full picture came into focus, I wasn't angry anymore. I was working. There's a particular clarity that arrives once you stop asking why someone hurt you and start asking how they thought they could get away with it. It's not about punishment, it's about protecting what's yours, what's left, what still matters. The first move was financial. Quiet, procedural, precise. I canceled our joint credit cards, not with a dramatic phone call or some warning note, but by initiating a standard fraud protection inquiry. It flagged the accounts, paused access, and rerouted all new activity through me. Next, I opened a trust account under my name only. Half our liquid savings, legally protected, untouchable. A move advised by someone I'd contacted discreetly, a lawyer recommended by an old friend who specialized in pre-divorce asset protections, the kind of man who wore polite suits and asked sharp questions. During our second meeting, he leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his notepad. "Do you have proof?" he asked, his tone measured but firm. I met his eyes without hesitation. "I have hotel records, calendar notes, voice recordings, picked up accidentally, but all legally captured. Names, phone numbers, a timeline." He nodded slowly, the corners of his mouth tightening in quiet approval. "You're ahead of the curve," he said. "Most men don't plan. They react. I'm done reacting," I told him, the words landing like a line I'd drawn weeks ago. And I meant every syllable. At home, I kept everything normal. Better than normal, actually. I helped with dishes, folded her laundry, even surprised her with takeout one night. She looked at me sideways, smiling but searching my face. "You're being sweet lately," she said, eyes narrowed slightly. "Everything okay?" I kissed her cheek. "Just giving you the calm you wanted." She tilted her head, like she was trying to see through the window I'd closed behind my eyes. But she didn't push. That was the thing about someone who believes you're weak. They rarely notice when someone's already made their decision. In the evenings, I started collecting data, screenshots, statements, appointment confirmations, every breadcrumb she didn't know she'd dropped. She'd booked gym sessions that aligned with hotel charges. Used a temporary email once to register for a rewards program tied to one of the hotel chains. Sloppy, but common. People don't hide when they think you're not looking. One night, she left her laptop open while she showered. It pinged, a message alert. Not from him, but from a friend. A woman I knew well. A woman who, months ago, toasted us at our anniversary dinner. "You sure he hasn't caught on?" the message read. "Please. He's not that type," she replied. "He's not even curious." I saved the entire thread. That was the night I stopped seeing her as the woman I'd married. Not because of the betrayal, but because of the ease with which she dismissed me. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt most. It was the contempt. People always reveal how they really see you in private conversations they never think you read. That weekend, I called a second lawyer, a family law specialist. She was quiet, professional, efficient in the way people are when they've seen too much chaos to be impressed by it. She scanned my notes, tapped a few things into her tablet, then looked up. "Are you planning to confront her directly?" she asked, her tone measured, like she already knew the answer. "I want a clean exit," I said, keeping my voice calm. Not bitter, just clear. She gave a small nod, as if that confirmed something for her. "Anyone else to factor in?" "No," I replied. That part, at least, was simple. "Then you're already ahead," she said, sitting back in her chair. "Just stay quiet. Let her believe she's still running the narrative." I nodded once. "That's the plan." From that point forward, I staged everything. Rehearsed responses in the mirror. Practiced neutral tones until they felt real. I replayed potential scenarios during long drives, calibrating every detail. Not because I wanted a scene, but because I refused to give her one. At night, I listened to her breathe beside me and wondered if she felt anything. If there was even a flicker of guilt, or if she simply believed I was too soft to ever leave, too steady to ever shift. The irony was almost poetic. She had asked for calm. She had feared intensity. She had pushed for emotional stillness, so I gave her stillness. Not the absence of emotion, but the cold presence of strategy. Not silence out of fear, but silence forged in preparation. In the quiet, I rebuilt the parts of myself she had been eroding for months. Not with rage, with structure. I was no longer waiting to be loved the way I loved her. I was preparing to leave, not just the marriage, but the version of myself that stayed too long trying to fix what she was actively breaking. The night I chose wasn't special. No anniversary, no symbolic date. Just a Tuesday. That's the thing about real endings. They rarely arrive with fanfare. They step in quietly, sit down across from you, and say, "It's time." She walked through the door balancing a takeout bag, talking into her phone with that half-laugh she reserved for one person now. Her voice softened when she noticed me sitting at the dining table. "Hey," she said, slipping the phone into her bag like it hadn't just been lit with someone else's attention. "Didn't expect you to be home this early." I didn't rise, didn't smile, just gestured to the chair across from me. On the table sat a plain folder. No markings, no drama, just weight. She raised an eyebrow but played along, pulling out the chair slowly before lowering herself into it. Her hands settled on her thighs, fingers flexing like someone trying not to fidget. Her eyes flicked to the folder on the table, then back to mine, searching for context. Her voice came cautiously, almost casual. "What's this?" she asked, like the answer might still be harmless if she said it lightly enough. "Receipts," I said evenly. "Calendar entries, credit card records, screenshots." Her expression didn't change at first, just a tight smile held a moment too long, like she was trying to decide which version of the truth to offer. Then came the blink, that first flicker of calculation behind her eyes. She lifted her chin slightly, voice cool but cautious. "I don't know what you think," she began, like she was still hoping confusion could buy her time. I cut her off, not with volume, but finality. "It's not about what I think. It's about what I know." I watched her open the folder, her fingers stiff as she turned each page. Her eyes moved quickly at first, then slowed. By the third page, she paused, and for just a moment, it felt like she forgot to breathe. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossing not in defiance, but in defense, like she was bracing for a verdict. Her voice came out small, cracked at the edges. "I thought you never," she began, the rest of the sentence lost in the weight between us. "Look," I offered. "I know. That's what you counted on." She shook her head slowly, eyes glassy now, the beginnings of something like regret or panic bubbling beneath the surface. "I thought you loved me." "I did. I leaned forward, not angry, not bitter, just tired in a way that felt deeper than exhaustion. You wanted a man who wouldn't fight. You got him. I was confused, she whispered, reaching for something that would sound like explanation. I didn't know how I felt. I thought maybe. I stood up slowly, not to intimidate, but to mark the end of the conversation. Softness isn't the absence of strength, I said. It's the choice not to use it. I'm done choosing. She blinked, stunned for a beat. So that's it? You're just walking away? I didn't nod, didn't confirm. I just walked down the hall, grabbed the small travel bag I'd packed weeks earlier, and slipped on my coat. She followed me to the door, voice breaking now. We can talk about this. Please. Don't you want to fix it? I did, I said without looking back. But you weren't interested in repair. You wanted permission. I stepped outside before she could respond. The night air was cool, clean. My breath came easy, like I hadn't fully exhaled in months. I walked to my car without hurry, without shaking. Inside, I sat with my hands on the wheel for a moment, letting the silence settle. I wasn't proud of how it ended. I wasn't triumphant, but I was done, truly done. She texted me that night. A string of messages, then voicemails. The first full of anger, the second full of apology. By morning, I'd blocked her on everything but email, a deliberate choice. I wasn't trying to erase her. I was protecting myself from what came next. She tried to call my sister. Reached out to a couple of mutual friends. Said she was blindsided. That she didn't understand why I'd left so suddenly. But people talk, quietly, but eventually. And in those back channels of friends and phone calls, her story cracked. Some had noticed the same things I had. The glances, the absences, the late-night texts she never meant for anyone to see. One friend, the one who had toasted us at our anniversary, sent me a short message. I'm sorry. I knew something wasn't right. I didn't want to be involved. But I knew. I thanked her. And I didn't respond to anything else. It took exactly 10 days before her mask cracked publicly. She tried to keep the image together at first. Posted a filtered photo of herself at brunch, captioned with some hollow quote about growth through storms. A few mutual friends liked it out of habit, but the comments were thin. By the time she reached out again, this time through a long, formal email, the tone had shifted. It was a blend of nostalgia and veiled panic. She wrote about what we had, about being lost, about needing to talk before lawyers get involved. I didn't reply. 2 days later, she was formally notified. The paperwork was clinical. No theatrics. Just a quiet, exacting execution of what I'd spent the last month preparing. My attorney ensured the division was fair on paper, and protective in practice. The trust account secured what she couldn't reach. The cancelled cards had cut off spending trails before she realized what was happening. What I didn't expect was the silence that followed. Not from her, from the people around us. Friends who used to double date with us suddenly stopped reaching out. A few sent neutral texts, checking in on me, never mentioning her. One even confessed he'd seen her once at the gym with someone who wasn't me, but hadn't known how to bring it up. Turns out, everyone has a threshold between discomfort and complicity. She, on the other hand, started to unravel fast. The one behind the secrecy, Jace, cut contact completely. No explanation, no drama, just gone. Deleted his accounts, changed his number, vanished like he never existed. She must have thought he'd be there after I left, that she was trading one stability for another. But he wasn't built for that. He'd gotten what he wanted, and left. She reached out again. This time, a voicemail I didn't delete. Her voice was cracked, unfamiliar. I know I made mistakes. I thought you'd always be there. I didn't mean to destroy everything. I didn't think you'd actually leave. And there it was. Not regret for the betrayal. Regret for the consequence. She wasn't mourning me. She was mourning the man who had once stayed quiet no matter what. The steady hand. The soft landing. She'd mistaken my silence for surrender. But silence is just strength, sharpened. That fall, I moved into a new apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy. Just quiet, clean. Mine. I kept the walls bare for a while. Not out of sadness, out of clarity. It was the first space in years that didn't echo with someone else's needs. I started going to the gym again. Not to become someone I wasn't, but to return to someone I had been. A man who didn't need to shrink to make a relationship work. Who didn't need to apologize for being calm, or strong, or measured. I thought about her sometimes, not fondly, not angrily, just clearly. I remembered the way she used to reach for my hand in crowded rooms, the way she once rested her head against my shoulder during thunderstorms. That woman died long before I walked out, and the one who remained wasn't someone I knew or owed anything more to. There was a woman I saw often at the coffee shop below my building. She had quiet eyes and read novels instead of scrolling her phone. We nodded sometimes, nothing more. One morning, she asked if I was reading the same book she'd finished last month. I told her yes. She smiled. We talked for a minute. That was it. But the thing is, it felt honest, clean. Like two people who had nothing to prove, just space to breathe. I didn't rush anything. I wasn't chasing replacement. Healing isn't substitution, it's reconstruction. And some wounds aren't meant to be bandaged. They're meant to scar. So I let them. Because scars don't just mark what's been hurt. They prove what's been survived. Thank you for watching. Bye.